The 11th of September, 2001 was a tragic day for America that left every single person shocked. It was a day that may have changed the world forever, even to decades later. The impact of that day can still be observed in our daily lives. It's hard to believe how much that day has affected our lives. Let's watch a video today to gain a better understanding of its impact. On the morning of September 11th, American Airlines Flight 11 departed from Boston's International Airport. The flight was headed to Los Angeles as its final destination. There were approximately 92 people on board the airplane. Out of the total number of people on board, 11 were crew members and 81 were passengers. Approximately 15 minutes after takeoff, it was discovered that out of the 81 passengers, 5 were hijackers. By overwhelming the passengers and getting access to the cockpit, these hijackers take control of the plane. One of the hijackers was Mohammed Atta, who was trained as a pilot. He was 33 years old and was an Egyptian by nationality. He took control of the plane from the pilot and co-pilot and directed it directly in the direction of the World Trade Center. At that time, the World Trade Center was a monumental and historic building in America. At one point, it held the title of being the tallest building in the world. The World Trade Center was a source of pride for New York. The hijackers crashed the plane into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The crash occurred.
What is that? Somebody hit the World Trade Center or the...
It's a trade center.
The World Trade Center.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center.
At 8:46 a.m., at that time, the President of the United States, George Bush, was on a tour of a school in Florida while he was en route. His White House Chief of Staff was informed of the crash. The Chief of Staff informed George Bush, who initially found it difficult to believe. Bush remarked that it was unbelievable that anyone could even contemplate such an act. Bush speculated that the pilot may have suffered a heart attack, leading to the plane crashing into the building. Bush wondered how else such an incident could have occurred. Just 17 minutes later, it was discovered that United Airlines Flight 175 had also been hijacked by 5 hijackers. The hijackers overtook the pilots and took control of the plane once more. These hijackers headed back towards the World Trade Center, just 17 minutes after the first accident, crashing the plane into the South Tower and then the second crash into the second tower. At this time, U.S. President George Bush had arrived at the school and was in a classroom. He was in the middle of a reading exercise called the Pet Goat, with a group of second-grade children. At that moment, his Chief of Staff Andrew Card entered the classroom and whispered into his ear that America is under attack. Despite this news, George Bush remained in the classroom and continued the reading exercise. The reading exercise continued for the next 7 minutes. During this time, he interacted with the children. He even took photos with the children and the teachers and complimented the children. Those 7 minutes were critical as it was during that time. The news of 2 planes crashing into the World Trade Center spread worldwide. Later, many people criticized George Bush for not taking immediate action and questioned why he remained in the classroom. He stayed in the classroom for those minutes. Even though it was known that 2 planes had been hijacked, America had been attacked, and there had been crashes. A few minutes after the second plane crash, news came in that 2 more planes had been hijacked. One of the planes was American Airlines Flight 77. The flight had departed from Washington International Airport. This airplane had 5 hijackers on board and was en route to Los Angeles. United Airlines Flight 93 was the second flight. The flight was headed from New Jersey to California. The flight was hijacked by 4 individuals. Both flights were redirected towards Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States of America, the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense, is located on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. It is commonly known as the Pentagon. The Pentagon is also an iconic building. After hijackers directed Flight 77 in this direction, the plane crashed into the Pentagon structure.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. We're looking at a live picture from Washington, and there is smoke pouring out of the Pentagon. It would appear that there has been another major explosion.
Following the third crash, the entire airspace of the United States was closed down. All airplanes in the air were ordered to land immediately at their nearest airport. The third crash into the Pentagon building occurred at 9:37 a.m. As a result, a significant portion of the Pentagon was destroyed. At 9:59 a.m., as a result of the plane crash into the South Tower, the whole building caught on fire. Due to the fire and crash, the structure of the building had weakened, causing the entire building to collapse. The South Tower collapsed. During this time, there was fear surrounding the fourth hijacked plane. People were afraid of where the hijackers might crash United Airlines Flight 93, the fourth jet they had taken over. A plane was suspected to have intentionally crashed into either the White House or the U.S. Capitol. The White House is crucial to the United States as it serves as the residence of the U.S. President. The U.S. President resides there. The United States Capitol building is where the U.S. federal government's legislative activities take place. Capitol Hill and the Indian Parliament are equivalent. Both serve as the legislative seat of their respective governments. On the other side, some passengers on the hijacked plane had turned on their phones. Their family members began calling them on their phones. Their family members informed them about what was happening in America at that time. They were told that 3 planes had been crashed. The World Trade Center was attacked and it eventually destroyed. The passengers on the plane soon realized what was happening. Their plane was hijacked and could have crashed like the others. They had limited options. They had options. Either they would be cowardly and fight the hijackers, or they would just watch as the hijackers crashed that plane as well. These people showed courage by standing up to the hijackers. In response to the hijackers, ordinary passengers aboard United Airlines Flight 93 began to fight back. There was a commotion on the plane. The following part of the story is unclear about the details of what exactly happened on the plane. There are audio recordings from the plane available. It's unclear whether the passengers were successful in reaching the cockpit, and whether the passengers were able to overpower the hijackers during their fight against the. However, we are aware that the passengers made an effort to resist, and ultimately, the plane crashed in a barren field. There is no doubt that many lives were saved due to the bravery of the passengers. The World Trade Center's North Tower fell at 10:28 a.m. as well. It was discovered that more than 6,000 people had been injured and over 3,000 people had died as a result of the accidents. By the time this horrifying morning moved into American midday, this attack was carried out by the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda, and numerous people died at the Pentagon and the World Trade Center. However, Osama bin Laden issued a statement a few days following the 9/11 incident claiming that he was not responsible. He rejected any sort of responsibility. However, around 3 years after the event, in the 2004 U.S. elections, Osama bin Laden released a public audio clip in which he accepts credit for the terrorist attack and admits to it. Osama defended it by claiming that Al-Qaeda had many objectives when executing the attacks: the interference of the U.S. in the Middle East, the U.S. supporting Israel, supporting the actions against the Muslims in Lebanon, supporting Russia in crimes against Muslims in Chechnya, sanctions that had been declared by the U.S. against Iraq, the U.S. collaboration with Saudi Arabia, and sending its troops to Saudi Arabia. Osama mentions several justifications for his claim that these are the reasons behind their attack on America. They were trying to teach a lesson to America. All the causes added up to one primary conclusion: they were acting because Muslims were being mistreated. Remember this, because the story will give you a valuable lesson about it in the next section. The main mastermind of these attacks is identified in the 9/11 Commission report. Khalid Sheikh Muhammad Ali, a terrorist from Pakistan. This individual also participated in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. He was placed in the Guantanamo Bay jail together with 4 other convicted persons. He is still there, going through a trial. However, in May 2011, Osama bin Laden was ultimately killed. Yet, it could be crucial to understand how such attacks impact the everyday lives of people in this situation. In addition, I'm referring to all regular people worldwide when I say this. Not just the average American. The extent of these strikes' influence is unbelievable. In a hurry, the U.S. Congress approved the Patriot Act just 6 weeks after the 9/11 attacks. A few of the members of the U.S. Parliament were not even familiar with the law. There were neither changes made, nor was there an official conversation. The Patriot Act was only approved. Why did this act seem so unusual? The U.S. government now has full authority and can spy on its population due to this act. It was capable of secretly accessing any books, records, documents, and paperwork. They also gave the judiciary less authority. Furthermore, everyone was covered by this act. It was brought up by many that the government had silenced those who opposed it. By using the Patriot Act and the danger of terror as justifications, this act was used to silence those who are criticizing the administration and speaking out. Spoiler: Edward Snowden published a shocking expose on this around a decade and a half after 9/11's. News of the U.S. government's monitoring program quickly circulated the world. Spying was taking place. Daily phone records of the consumers were being gathered by the NSA. The government could monitor anyone it wanted, and it did so without a warrant, any proof, or notification. After 9/11's, there was another surprising change in the standards for airport security. You might be shocked to hear that, before 2001, there weren't many security checks at most airports worldwide. Sometimes the security check was as simple as checking the ID and using the metal detectors you see when entering malls. It was like the one you would get before boarding an airline. You were able to board the airplane without having to arrive much earlier. It was enough to arrive 15 to 30 minutes in advance. But everything changed on 9/11's. These days, personal ID checks, passport checks, and full body scans are performed. You are instructed to empty your pockets and are issued boarding credentials. Laptops and other electronics must be kept outside. Throughout the luggage check process, you are also limited on how much liquid you can carry on an airline. There were not any preceding minute limits. Explosive detection systems were installed across the country after December 2002, and subsequently all over the rest of the world. Pilots were initially equipped with self-defense firearms in early 2003 to guard against attacks, small guns, and even explosives. Cockpit doors were strengthened. Osama said that the attacks were justified by U.S. involvement in the Middle East. But this was far more common after 9/11's. Afghanistan is invaded by the USA after 9/11's. We are still following the strategy to find these terrorist organizations. For 20 years, the USA has stayed in Afghanistan. Trillions of U.S. taxpayer dollars are lost even after Osama bin Laden is murdered. Numerous U.S. troops were killed. These wars steal a great deal of civilian lives. Additionally, the U.S. invades Iraq as well. Recall how Osama claimed he was taking revenge on Muslims for mistreating them. Attacks against Muslims increased further in the days after 9/11's. There's a fresh boom of xenophobia directed towards South Asians and Muslims. 481 hate crimes against Muslims were committed in 2001. Furthermore, there have been other hate crimes committed against Sikhs as a result of many nationalists unable to see the differences between Osama bin Laden's beard and turban and those of the Sikhs. Balbir Singh Sodhi was possibly the first victim of criminal acts of this kind. He made a financial donation for the 9/11's victims on September 15th. When he was murdered in Arizona, he was outside his gas station planting some flowers. Frank Roque, who killed him, was arrested and has been imprisoned for life. After this, several Sikhs cut their beards and stopped using turbans. However, violence against Sikhs and Muslims continued to rise. After these attacks, Americans were more fearful, and as a result, many individuals were jailed and imprisoned without any supporting documentation. Large-scale violations of human rights were occurring, and Americans encouraged and supported them. They believed that the monitoring of them, the torture of those who were being imprisoned, and the arrest of innocent individuals were all necessary in the war against terrorism. A lot of people say that torture was a part of America's war on terror. In simple terms, the result was an increase in the number of people deciding to become terrorists. Out of revenge or anger, it is said that an eye for an eye blinds everyone. Osama had declared that he was killing several innocent people in revenge for what the USA had done. After Osama carried out that act, the United States of America said that it was responding by invading Afghanistan and Iraq and murdering a great number of innocent people there. The relatives of the deceased believe that they would join a terrorist organization to get revenge on the United States of America.
We will not stop fighting. We will not put down our weapons until we reach your lands.
The story of revenge for revenge will never come to an end. There is an unending cycle of decline here. It is endless. We also have a second lesson to learn. We should never allow any government to use an act of terrorism as a justification to exploit us. After 9/11s, there was widespread abuse of U.S. individuals by the U.S. government via means of the Patriot Act and monitoring. Never allow fear to cause you to lose vision of reality. Friends, what's your opinion about this incident and its effects on the whole world? Tell us in the comments section. I hope you find this video informative. If you like our video, then do subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends.